G'day mates, thanks for watching. Today we're going to do a video based on the new Fidelity FX of CYBERPUNK 2077. AMD just released this new feature and it's been added in patch 1.5 for CYBERPUNK 2077. Fidelity FX is AMD's version of NVIDIA's DLSS, and it reduces the quality of the texture resolution and then upscales it to increase performance. So here I've enabled Fidelity FX on performance mode, and the texture resolution is bad. So immediately you notice that everything looks all blocky and smeared, and the resolution of the textures are low, and then Fidelity FX then tries to upscale them to make them look better to increase performance. But one thing I noticed is that even though the quality is low for the textures, the GPU usage is low. So here you notice it's only 1700 megahertz, 1600 megahertz, and that is incredibly low GPU usage. But the frame rate's the same, 65 to 75, so it's not changing a whole lot. So I noticed that even though the Fidelity FX is upscaling everything, it's not increasing the frame rate a whole lot. The frame rate is the same. So here now I've increased it. Now it's 2000, almost 100 megahertz. Now it's 1900 megahertz GPU usage, and the quality is increasing slowly. So basically the frame rate's staying the same, the quality is increasing, and the GPU usage is increasing. So if you're not capping out your GPU, Fidelity FX so far is not that useful. But where it will be useful is if you enable ray tracing, where your GPU will be maxed out. So far, if you don't use ray tracing and your GPU is not maxed out, then you're basically just degrading the quality of the textures for no benefit. I don't know if this is particular to CYBERPUNK 2077, but that's something I noticed. So we're getting a decrease in quality, but we're getting a decrease in GPU usage. This GPU is capable of 2300 up to 2400 on stock. It can be overclocked, but see, now we're getting 2300. So we've enabled ray tracing. Now we're maxing out the GPU, and effectively we're getting a ghosting effect from the Fidelity FX. So similar to DLSS, it has the problem where you get ghosting on effects. It doesn't know how to render things correctly while it's upscaling it. So we are getting a performance increase though, up to 50 frames per second, which is great. So now we're going to performance mode. So we're going to get a higher frame rate, 50, 60 frames per second with ray tracing enabled, which is impressive. But the textures look all smeared and not very appealing. So that upscaling is working really hard to try and make everything look better, but the resolution of the textures is so low that the quality is degraded. So you get ghosting effects, you get smearing effects, everything looks all washed out and kind of not that good looking, kind of like a lower resolution anyway. But as we increase to ultra quality, we will get a increase in quality for the textures. So now the textures look really good, and our frame rate's dropped all the way down to 30. So we've almost halved our frame rate. So if you absolutely need the frame rate increase and you want to run ray tracing, Fidelity FX is an amazing feature. It allows you to change your frame rate to suit. But really we're sacrificing the resolution of our textures, and then increasing the quality of our lighting through ray tracing. So now with everything turned off and ray tracing, we're only getting 20 frames per second, 24 frames per second, which is abysmal. And the GPU is maxing out and even using 250 plus watts of power. So if it's an absolute must to have high quality ray tracing, then Fidelity FX is a good option. But you're basically weighing up, do I want better lighting effects or do I want higher resolution textures? And that's really, it's good to have the extra option, and now you do with the Fidelity FX. There was a CAS feature originally that gave you this in 2077, and I was playing around with that yesterday, and that was also very similar to Fidelity FX. But now this is the more advanced version of it. But it still comes with the same problem where it smears the textures and has ghosting effects on specific textures and problems. In my opinion, I actually prefer to have a little bit of lighting, so I like a little bit of ray tracing, but not at the cost of textures. So I prefer higher textures. So here you can see the reflections actually look amazing. Everything up close with the reflections look really, really good, but then everything in the far distance actually kind of looks washed out and not as nice as higher resolution. This is currently at 1440p resolution. So in my opinion, a quality setting with ray tracing on medium actually gives you the best of both worlds. So you get nice looking textures, a really good frame rate, and good reflections. So it now gives people the option of getting a higher frame rate and having a more immersive experience with better textures and better reflections from ray tracing and lighting effects. So this setting is probably one of the better settings, and you're still getting 45 frames per second, which surprisingly on CYBERPUNK is playable. It looks good. And then as we increase the quality of the textures, the frame rate drops off, but it's still better than without Fidelity FX enabled. So a good feature. And then if we turn ray tracing off, we can go back to having higher quality textures, and then the lighting is disabled, so you don't have the reflections. So a good feature, an additional slider that allows you to customize how the game looks. I personally prefer to have some lighting effects, but the higher resolution textures always is noticeable to me. These upscaling features are good and they're great for a higher frame rate boost, but I personally prefer to have the higher texture resolution myself. But when you set it to quality, Fidelity FX at quality, it's a really good compromise and gives you a really nice frame rate boost. Here I am testing in 1080p, and I noticed that the frame rate is what actually doesn't. I noticed that the frame rate doesn't make much difference, but the GPU usage changes dramatically. So as you can see, it's only using 1700 megahertz on the GPU when the GPU can handle 2400. And it just sacrifices resolution for no benefit. This could be a particular coding of the game. But here you can see it even dropped down to 1200 megahertz. It's just not using the GPU at all. So basically the GPU has more headroom and there's no reason not to push it higher. The Fidelity FX basically reduces the resolution of textures anyway, so it's basically a scaling system where you could just always keep the resolution at what you want, 1440p, 4K, and then adjust the texture resolution, giving yourself a performance boost rather than changing the video resolution. And with the upscaling technology, it's effectively free performance boost, but you do get degradation depending on which quality setting put the fidelity on. But it's better than dropping your resolution. So say for example, you've got a 4K monitor, if you put it down to 1080p, you're going to get much worse quality. You will get a frame rate increase, but the quality of the visuals are going to suffer dramatically. Whereas if you just set it to 4K and then put it on a medium setting or for Fidelity FX, effectively you're doing the same thing, but you get a huge performance boost. You get to still have higher resolution, but your textures will degrade a little bit the same way as if you drop the resolution of your down to 1080p. So it's a much better option to use Fidelity FX than it is to reduce the resolution of the screen. That way it also uses your GPU more and allows the visual performance to increase while also getting a decent frame rate. Overall, a great feature. As it gets better, as they start to improve the quality of these features, and future GPUs will have more AI cores, tensor cores, they will be able to take advantage of these features and get higher frame rates for very little performance hit. AMD is doing a great job, and DLSS has been out for a while now. AMD is trying to keep up with the features. You can get fidelity effects in some games, but not all games. So DLSS still has the edge over AMD. But as far as I can tell, it does the same thing. If you turn DLSS quality down, it will smear the textures exactly the same. So features are identical. The problems are identical. You get the ghosting and the smearing, but you get the performance increase. So overall, more features is better. More is more. And another great feature to have for Team Red. And as the AI cores increase in the future, these features are going to be absolutely amazing. It just allows the GPU to put out even higher quality visuals for less impact. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.